All right, everyone, welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. So it's my pleasure to be back here again, David Searns, co-CEO with Haley Marketing, and I'm here with Brad and Rachel. This is our second month in a row. Last month we talked about how to optimize your sales funnel. So if you missed that one, go to lunchwithhaley.com, go to the on-demand webinars and check out the recording. But today we're going to do a follow-up that's about essential sales tools for 2026. And basically look at some of the things that we're seeing companies that are succeeding are doing a little bit differently, and hopefully some things that can help everybody out. Before we jump into the presentation, if there are questions, please feel free to use that Q&A window. We'll do our best to monitor it as we go along and hopefully answer questions that you have as we're going through today's presentation. All right, so I get to kick things off, and I think this is very much like last month, although we had more fun making graphics with AI this month. The reality of staffing sales is it's not just that it's harder, that's what we talked about last month, but it's the game has really changed. And we're dealing with a longer sales cycle. It's taking companies longer to make a decision because more people are involved. What you'll see in a little bit, a slide we have coming up talking about who some of those decision makers are. But if you're in sales, you need to learn to speak new languages. You need to learn to convey your value in new ways. You need to get consensus amongst multiple buying influences to finally, get the deal, get that contract to sign so you can get the first purchase orders. And one of the big things we talked a little bit about last month, we're gonna drill into a little bit more today is buyer research and how much work people do before you even get an opportunity to have that first call. And one of the things that's, I think, the biggest change is that staffing sales, by and large, doesn't start with the salesperson making an outbound call like it did for years and years and years. Very often now, the first touch point, even if you've made an outbound attempt, the first touch point is digital. It's going to be through your website, through SEO, through AI, through social media. So we have to learn to engage people in different ways. The buying process, the selling process is different. It's changed from a model we've been using for decades to one that is now much more driven by the buyer, not by the seller. They're researching, they're doing comparisons, they're getting internal buy-in from their teams. Then they want to talk to you. But they're almost at the finish line when they want to talk to you. In fact, the data shows that 70 to 80% of B2B buying decisions happen before the first sales engagement. So your website, your content marketing, how you show up online and in the real world, that's doing the selling before you get the opportunity to actually sell. So I want to repeat that statistic. 70 to 80% of the research is done by buyers before speaking with the vendor. So if you think about that, by the time you're actively engaged in a sales conversation, the buyer is down to their preferred vendors. If you're talking to them, good news, you're probably on the list. But now they want to know why they should choose you. And it's not just about who you are, it's about what you can do for them. And again, that varies greatly depending on who you're selling to. So, Brad, we're going to turn it over to you, and you're going to kind of go through the staffing sales process.
Yeah, David, you really teed this up. It's now a multi-person, multi-persona game. So I have the fortunate chance to talk with a lot of staffing company leaders each and every day, week over week. And one thing that has really changed over time is the number of people that are involved or sitting at the table during the decision-making process of which vendor to bring in. So today's staffing buyer committee is made up of a ton of people. So I always ask the question when we are working with a new client on strategy, well, who are you selling into? Typically, it's set that they start with, well, we want to go top down. I said, okay, so you're selling into the CEO. Well, the CEO really is focused on strategy overall for the business. They're looking at strategic growth. They're looking at cost controls. They're looking at overall labor costs. They're looking to avoid disruptions in their business. And overall, they're looking to make sure that their business is running cleanly and efficiently. Now, oftentimes you can't get in front of the CEO. So then you're going down to the COO. They're all about maintaining productivity. We want to make sure that our operations are as smooth and running as efficiently as possible. Now, a lot of times, again, you can't get into the C level. So then we revert down to HR, we look at talent acquisition, and so on. Those HR folks, the directors and the managers, even though they're in the same department, they have different needs. They have different KPIs that they're being held accountable to. The director is looking to reduce time to fill. They want to improve hiring outcomes so that the hiring managers, the department managers, are really happy with the talent that they're placing. And then that HR manager is looking at time to fill. They're looking at compliance. They're looking at the overall candidate experience. They're looking at their employment brand overall. Then you've got talent acquisition, especially in larger organizations. They're tasked with scaling recruiting capabilities. They're tasked with having an effective and efficient talent pipeline. They're tasked with vetting and evaluating vendors and holding those vendors accountable. Now, a lot of companies that I talk to want to sell directly to the plant manager. So the message there is all about making sure that you don't have downtime, making sure that no shows, absenteeism, open roles don't impact their ability to get product and service out the door and that there's no production gaps. And then you've got office managers. They need quick access to really dependable people that are going to show up. Oftentimes they might be working on special projects and need special skills. But as you can see, there's so many different variables and so many different facets they're looking at when choosing which vendor to bring in that one singular message really can't appease all of them. So our messaging has to match the audience. We cannot have just one generic staffing message that talks about how you provide the best service possible. It's not going to work. We need to really key in on their emotional triggers and make sure that we have a message that matches their KPIs, what they're measured on, and make sure that we're attacking and getting in front of the right buyers. So we had we did a project for one of our clients, and we often create quarterly campaigns where we'll go through and say, all right, throughout the quarter, we're going to have a multi-step integrated direct marketing campaign, and we're going to send this out, and we're going to get some results. So we, in the past, had created kind of one campaign, and then their salespeople would choose who to put this on or who to put onto the campaign to get this. And for the first half of the year, the campaigns were working okay. They were driving some new sales, some new revenue, generating some conversations, but it wasn't knock your socks off. So we stepped back and we said, all right, the salespeople are putting on just a handful of people. They are very protective over who got added to these campaigns. We said let's take that over. And instead of letting them choose who goes on these campaigns, let's look at creating campaign variations for each one of those personas that I just referenced on the last slide. So it was the same overall campaign, same key takeaways, but our messaging varied slightly based on the outcomes that each one of those personas wanted. And then we put everyone on the campaign. And the results were amazing. They generated over $1 million in revenue compared to tens of thousands in the first half of the year. So the lesson here is really that when you can align your messaging to that buyer's needs, their priorities, the KPIs that they are being held accountable to reach, you're going to create an emotional connection with that person. You're going to get more conversations and you're going to close more sales. So even if you come up with an amazing campaign, look at ways that you can slightly alter the message to key in on what's most important to the person that you're selling into at that point, and create variations because it's not one person making the decision. Oftentimes it's 5 to 10 different people making that decision. The next thing I want to key in on is creating sales content, really assets for your sales team that they can use on drop offs, they can use as collateral, they can use to enable the buyer, as David mentioned earlier, because those people are doing some research ahead of time. The better, more aligned information we get them, the better the outcome will be for the staffing company. So when you look at buyer enablement, we want to do a few different things. Again, David mentioned that stat earlier, 70 to 80% of that buying decision is made before they talk to you. So let's enable the buyer with information that sales and your company really want to get across. So it starts first with understanding their problem. Identify their pain points. Start with those key drivers that I mentioned a few slides ago for each individual type of position that you're selling into. Identify what keeps them up at night, what problems they have in their business and in their individual roles, and create content that aligns with that. Show them that you're the solution to their challenges. Show them that you can help them look like a hero in their own organization because you're solving the problem for them. Then we want to look at evaluating solutions and comparing and showing options. And I'll get into some examples of that here in a little bit. And then you want to give your salespeople the tools, the takeaways that they can share with buyers so that they can justify their decision on bringing you in. Okay, whether that are case studies, testimonials, proof points, referrals, we want to make sure that your sales teams are enabled with the information that really helps you stand out and helps that person that you're selling into sell your organization to the rest of the decision makers. Now, let's get into some specific examples. And when we look at creating a sales toolkit, we want to make sure that there's some core assets that your team can use during, again, outreach, meetings, follow ups that really help you stand apart from the competition. So, some examples on this might be articles or blog posts or white papers that address best practices, that focus on how to's, that really dig into the everyday tactical problems that those buyers have, and then the higher level strategic problems that they have. So some samples of that might be, why turnover is increasing in manufacturing, or how unfilled positions really impact the bottom line and profitability, or maybe looking at labor shortages, and make these specific. So if you're marketing to a specific industry or a specific type of person, let's put a filter on that content that is really focused on them. Then I've seen a lot of staffing companies really leverage labor market trends, especially when these are tied to a prospect's industry or a specific geography. So if you have one or two offices in a specific geography, let's put out a monthly labor and demand report for that industry. Let's go out and let's survey and talk to hiring leaders about what they're seeing in the market and compile all that content. You can be the source for labor information in a city or in an industry, and that puts you in a very different category than other staffing sales reps who are calling up and saying, "Hey, do you have any openings?" And then look at industry insights. So AI and other resources have made it very easy to collect and gather great industry insights from all different sources. Let's use those tools to compile those insights and share that with your audience. So, again, if you can create really insightful content, it's going to enable your sales team and enable your buyer to see the difference that you provide before they ever pick up the phone and talk to you. Now, let's dig into some of these more specifically. So I mentioned, problem solving guides or articles. I absolutely love content that helps a prospect solve a very specific challenge that they're facing in their job. And oftentimes these are tied directly to workforce challenges, but they don't necessarily have to be. You can help them solve some other problems as well and really position yourself as somebody that cares about the business. So again, some examples of this is maybe how to reduce absenteeism in your warehouse teams, or maybe effective ways to stabilize production during demand surges and leveraging contingent labor to do that. Or maybe you're looking at just employee retention in manufacturing, or maybe you're looking at things like changes in healthcare credentialing and how that impacts your hiring process and your flow. But what you want to do is think about creating really practical resources that you can use that position you as a partner, that position you as somebody that understands what your prospect needs to solve in order to be successful in their role and help their company. When you can do that, that creates a great opportunity for you to have a deep conversation and not just ask for a job order. Another example, I love comparison guides. So buyers, when they're doing their research, again, 80% of that research is happening before they talk to you. They love comparing options. So don't let them do this on their own and come up with their own assumptions. Do it for them. So, some examples of this might be looking at the difference between aligning with a staffing partner versus handling all recruiting internally. What are the pros and cons of both? You could look at the differences between a single source provider versus having multiple vendors. What are the challenges that multiple vendors create? What are the limitations that a single sole provider has? Okay, be transparent and be honest. That's what buyers really want. You could look at the difference between temporary staffing or direct hire or temp to hire. But these guides really help you control that message and highlight your strengths. And one that I didn't put on here that I want to share, and one that I absolutely love, is how about you look at who your biggest competitors in the market are, or who you bump up against, who you'd really like to outplace or kick out of a specific client. Let's go ahead and compare yourself to them. Do that for the buyer. Put that on your website. I know that sounds counterintuitive. Why in the world would you want to list your competitor on your website? But I've had amazing success lately at producing content around a top staffing company in an industry or the three top providers in a specific city. And you go in and you highlight your business, you highlight your awards, your honors, your metrics, your testimonials. You showcase how you're a leader in the top choice in that market, and then you highlight maybe two of your competitors too. And it's a great way to make sure that you're in the final decision process, get your name in there. It's also an amazing way to improve your ranking in AI search snippets and AI search. It's a very, very powerful tactical tool that is great for the buyer and great for your own visibility. I mentioned this earlier. I think case studies and proof assets are essential. You can say till you're blue in the face that you provide better service. Well, guess what? Your competitors are saying the same exact thing. So whoever can actually prove it is going to win over the buyer. So we want to make sure that we create client success stories and case studies. I like to use the flow of identifying the problem. So when a client first came to you, what was their big issue? What was their challenge? What did their previous provider not provide? Why did they switch? Then outline the service that you put in place. How did you really dig in and analyze what they truly needed? What was your process there? What did the program that you implemented really look like? And then what were the results? And get specific. When you track metrics and you can show metrics, that means so much more than just saying, oh, yeah, we reduced their time to fill. Well, that's great. By how much? What impact did that have on attendance? What impact did that have on production? Can you tie that back to profit? Can you outline how you reduced overtime costs and by what numerical figure? By how much? If you can provide those details, this then becomes a trust sale. Okay. It's not just feeling, it's built on trust, it's built on experience. When you can provide those assets, that reduces risk for that key decision maker and it allows them to sell you internally in their organization and get buy in across all of those decision makers. So if you don't have those, start putting them together. And then finally, I want to talk about talent showcase, or some people call these MPCs or skill marketing. Very, very effective still to get in front of people. It is one of the most powerful tools in staffing sales, especially in a talent shortage industry. The key is, though, get beyond the one-to-one sales calls. Look for ways to leverage talent profiles overall as an asset. It's going to help you drive more inquiries, um, build more credibility. So, some examples of this: create some candidate spotlights on your website. Feature your quote unquote inventory, your product, the amazing people that you recruit. Let's build these into most placeable candidates or skill marketing emails that can be sent out. Let's give resources to your sales team so that they can push that out through LinkedIn and other places. Um, I would look at technology to help you do this too. We have an amazing talent showcase that I like to think of it as a reverse job board, right? So you showcase your open positions on your website all the time. Why don't you showcase your top talent there? Let's make it easy for that buyer to do business with you. Let's make it easy so that they can see all of the amazing talent that's currently available. It's a great, great way to get and drive more inbound leads. And by skill marketing talent, you can create some urgency. My favorite examples are companies that have branded their skill marketing as well and make it seem like a value to be on your skill marketing list. Okay. Make sure that people understand that they're going to get access to this top talent before you open it up to the rest of the market. Put a premium on that. Make sure that they understand that these people are available now, but not for long. And demonstrate the depth of your recruiting skill. Um, as we've mentioned a few times already, 80% of that buying decision is already made before they talk to you. Let's focus on what you actually provide talent and show them all of the different skill variations that you offer. So, David, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Let's chat a little bit about your website.
Yeah, we're going to transition to that in just a second, Brad. I want to actually build on something you said about the talent showcase. One
Yeah.
of the big challenges for anybody who's in account management or sales in a staffing organization is to cross-sell, because there's a tendency in human nature that whatever an individual purchases from a vendor, they associate that vendor with that good or service. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, we need workers in our warehouse," then you're a light industrial staffing company. You may be able to do financial positions. You may be able to do other level professional positions. You may have an entire direct hire division, but you're still the LI staffing company. And the Talent Showcase is an easy way to demonstrate the wide range of people you can recruit and the caliber of the individuals you can recruit, because you're showing on your website, just like jobs illustrate to a job seeker the quality of the employers you serve. The talent showcase can indicate the quality of the people you represent. And it's super helpful when you're trying to do that cross marketing, because you can sit down with a client and say, "Hey, have you ever looked at the people we have in these other roles? You may not realize we can do these things." And now you're adding not just your words, but you're adding visuals and content and descriptions of these individuals to your cross-selling efforts, which makes them more impactful. All
And
right.
David,
Speaking of your website. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to add one of your easiest sales is growing your share of the market with your existing clients. So that is a great way to do this.
Thank you. Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning, and I'm going to reiterate it here. Brad also said it. Rachel will probably say it too, that your website is the first salesperson, because the prospect isn't getting to you in a face-to-face meeting until they're 50, 60, 70, as much as 80% of the way through the buying process. And to a great extent, your website determines whether or not people continue the quote unquote conversation with you, because they're making the determination from looking at your site, looking at online reviews, and a few other things. They're making a determination of, what do you do? How good are you at doing what you do? Do you work with companies like our business? Do you understand our industry? Do you know how to solve the kinds of problems we have? They want to know that you check all the boxes before they ever sit down to meet with you. So, we said at the beginning, 80% of the buyer's journey happens pre-sales. And Brad mentioned, showing up in search, and mentioned showing up in AI summaries. And so there's a whole series of acronyms: AIO, AEO, GEO, SEO. If you're an SEO geek, you really get into the nuances of all of those different things. But for most of us listening in today, we're not SEO professionals. What it really means is people are finding answers to questions in different places. Once upon a time, not that long ago, everybody did a Google search, or they actually asked all the questions during a sales meeting. But now we're going to our search engine of choice, most often Google. We're typing in a question, and then we're reading the AI synopsis of the answer, whatever the Google's AI, Gemini, found to report back to you. Now, there are many people, it's a very growing trend that they're bypassing Google altogether and they're going straight to a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini, and they're putting their query in to the AI. And what you're attempting to do is when the AI provides an answer or the AI provides a summary, will they include your company within the list of answers that the AI provides? And so your website has to support the buyer's research. And Brad gave you a really good overview of a lot of different kinds of content. I'm going to repeat some of it. I'm going to simplify it for you in a moment. But thinking about what questions are my customers, my best customers, asking in the sales process? What do they want to know before they pick a new vendor? In order for your website to remain relevant in 2026, you need content that answers those real buyer questions. And Brad used a really important word a few minutes ago. He used the word transparent. That's a hard word. Not that we lie, not that we try to cover things up, but to be transparent means we have to talk about uncomfortable things. So we're going to get into buyer enablement content, and we're going to talk about the big five topics in the Selling Seven videos. And this comes from a gentleman by the name of Marcus Sheridan and two books that he's written. One was called They Ask You Answer, and then his follow-up book done more recently was called Endless Customers. Highly recommend reading it, even though I'll confess in the book he says, don't use marketing agencies. But it's still a really good book. He's only wrong on one point. But in the book, he talks about these big five and selling seven. And this is where the transparency comes in. So, big five, cost versus and pricing. So, people want to know what you charge. Now, you may not on your website say our markup for a machine operator is 32%, but you would want to go into how you come up with pricing. And I remember back in I'm really going to date myself here. This is in the 1980s, sitting in a focus group of HR managers. And one of the ladies in the room, who was the HR manager for a fairly sizable organization in upstate New York, she talked to her perspective on how staffing companies do pricing. And I don't remember if I can exactly quote it, but I'll paraphrase it to say, she said, I think you guys just have a dartboard you use for pricing because every time I talk to an agency, it's a different price, even for the same job. And so, what you want to do on your website is you want to provide content that shows your model for pricing. And yep, your competitors can come see your model and they can steal it. But you want people to know how you approach pricing. And actually, that's a benefit to you because so often your customers treat pricing like it's one size fits all. It should be this markup for everything. Well, what if it's a short-term need? Shouldn't there be a higher markup? What if it's a very, very long-term assignment? Maybe the markup goes down over time. What if it's really hard to find skills? Is that the same markup as something that's a job that where people are in abundance? So if there's a rationale for how you approach pricing, people are going to want to know how you answer that question. What do you charge? Next one is about problems. People want to know what can go wrong with using your services. If somebody's a first-time staffing buyer and they've never worked with a staffing agency before, they want to know what can go wrong in the world of temp help and temp to hire and direct hire. They might not even understand how it works. Now, most of the people you're selling to are seasoned buyers. So they specifically want to know what goes wrong in staffing and how does your company deal with it? They want to make sure you're self-aware, that you understand the challenges in staffing and you've thought through solutions ahead of time. They want to have a flawless client service experience, which means they know you know how to deal with the problems that come up in using staffing companies. Brad talked about comparisons. This is a scary one. Who in the world wants to put the name of a direct competitor on their own website? Or even worse, you might put a competitor who is ranked higher than you in Google reviews, and you might put them on your website. Like, I would never do that. It's sort of like you see in politics. You don't name your opponent. It's always my opponent, not that person by name. Like nobody knows who the opponent is. It's the same thing in staffing. If you assume your prospective clients don't know the name of your competitors, you're wrong. What you want is them doing the comparison in a place you control the conversation on your own website. But this is where that transparency comes into play. If you tell stories about why you're so wonderful and they're so awful, nobody's going to believe it. So you want to address your strengths, your weaknesses, and their strengths and weaknesses. And where they beat you is fine to say, as long as you can also show where you beat them. You want the buyer, your ideal buyer, to look at that comparison and go, wow, for what we need in terms of staffing, this company, I don't care what everybody else is, this company is the best fit. And that's what they get out of comparisons. Then there's reviews. Now, everybody in staffing should have a proactive strategy for getting reviews, and more than once or twice a year. It should be an ongoing process because Google's going to reward you for recency of reviews. They also reward you for responding to reviews. So you want to make sure that, good or bad, when you get a review, you're putting comments in. And our SEO team will talk to you about also including important keywords in those responses. But I'll settle for, hey, just acknowledge them. And more importantly, have a proactive process to be inviting your clients, your candidates, everyone who's had a service experience at the time they were going to be the happiest, inviting them to leave you a review. And then best in class. We all do searches where we're like, give me the best of, fill in the blank. People are going to do that with staffing and recruiting as well. So if you're not listed as the best recruiter in your job category, you want to be working on creating content so that the AIs trust you. And that's the key word is, do they trust you so that you will show up in their answers? And that's way too long a topic of how you build that trust for today's webinar. But if it's something you're curious about, reach out. We can get into more detail. The selling seven, I won't spend as much time on, but they're very similar. But instead of just being content, these are videos where you are talking about the issues because people prefer to consume video content over written content. So you want to make sure that you have the videos. And the nice thing about recording the videos is you can also take the transcripts, put them on your website, which makes great written content. You can take the videos and put them on YouTube, which is going to help with that SEO and AIO and AEO. But you're talking about, again, cost and price. The 80% FAQs. What are those questions you get all the time that you're sick of answering? Record a video where you answer them. Those are the 80% of questions you get the most often. Product and service videos. Don't assume your customers understand everything about how staffing services work or specifically how you approach it. Make videos that help bring your service delivery process to life because you're selling something that's intangible. People can't see it, they can't touch it, they can't taste it. But the video can help them visualize it. Customer journey videos. This is another way of saying case studies, but show people what it's going to be like when they work with you, particularly on the candidate side. There's a lot of candidates that have never worked with a staffing company before. They're apprehensive about what happens. How will you help them? So be crystal clear by creating videos that show them what the candidate experience will be like. For your team, a lot of your team members never see people face to face because they may work just in a recruiting world where it's all remote, or a lot of your sales calls may be long distance. So we want to have bios of people where we can introduce them on camera and bring that humanness to a digital contact. And the last one's the claims we make. So everybody in their marketing talks about how wonderful they are and why our service is better and why you have better access to talent. The video is a chance to prove it. Demonstrate why the claims you make are valid because, again, this video is about building trust. All right, and we're just going to give a quick example of something called CRO, conversion rate or conversion response optimization. Basically, how do you get more people visiting your website to do something, to turn into a lead? Getting people to your website is a great start, but it's not enough if your website doesn't get people to take action. So we had a client, or it's not their website on screen, AI just made that up, but the company called Cornerstone Staffing did something really brilliant. They had a floating service form on their website. It wasn't beautiful. It it didn't inspire you to take action, but it did something that was critical. It was convenient. They made it easier to place a job order with Cornerstone Staffing than it was with other staffing agencies. And I was asking Brad right before this webinar, I was like, do you have any exact stats on how much more response that they get compared to an average website? And Brad said, I don't have the exact numbers, but if I look at the forms, it's about 10 times higher than what we see in most websites, just by making it quick and easy for people to submit their interests. So don't agonize over the design being perfect. Agonize over, have I given people ways to respond? Because a conversion focused design beats the pretty website every single day. Now, the website may be the second last step before they talk to your sales team, but sales has changed. And now, Brad, let's go back to the 72 touch reality of selling.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely crazy, but one of the networking groups that I'm in is a collection of marketing leaders within staffing agencies. And there's a firm that I really, really respect down in Texas out of Austin. They track data like no one that I've ever seen. And they found that it took 72 touches in order to get in front of a prospect. And when I say get in front of a prospect, actually have that initial conversation or book a meeting. Now, you might think about that as, boy, we had to make 72 calls. No, it's not just calls. It's looking at every interaction. So that might be marketing automation. That might be an ad getting in front of them. That might be email drops. That might be attendance on a webinar or downloading a white paper. But on average, it was 72 touches. You cannot expect a salesperson to make 72 touches on their own. In fact, most salespeople are giving up after 2 attempts. Okay. You're only short 70. So we need to make sure that we're surrounding them with the tools and the process to help them get to that 72 mark so that they can use their skills after you get an appointment. So automation and your systems are really critical. And what's exciting is Rachel's going to get into all of that now.
Thanks, Brad. So I think the important thing to think about automation is the fact that it is supporting those touch points and enhancing those touch points and not taking care of all of the touch points for you. I feel like a lot of companies that come in, they implement a marketing automation platform. They're like, awesome, I have a database of 5,000 people. Let's send 18 emails to them, and each email says, hey, are you hiring anyone right now? And those emails don't really offer any value. They don't really look at the data that you have on the contacts that you're reaching out to. They just kind of send the same thing in a systematic format. And automation is supposed to support your sales team and kind of give you insight so your sales team can be more efficient throughout the process. So when thinking about automation and what automation can do for you is it helps kind of carry you through that entire buying cycle. Those 72 touches, like Brad said, your salespeople cannot do 72 touches in a reasonable amount of time. They don't want to. They would probably hate their jobs if they had to. So automation kind of takes care of that air cover to get a lot of content, a lot of relevant information, a lot of education in front of your buyers while they're going through that touch point process. So a good example of something that you can automate is if you have a specific buying signal on a prospect. They recently have grown headcount or they've recently received a round of funding and their company is growing. Send them something specific related to that. Do you have education on, are people what people need after they receive funding? Do you have education on how to staff properly for companies that are growing? Understanding where they are in the process and then building your automations around that helps make your automation tool more effective. What automation is not is a spray and pray email tool. And I'll say this time and time again, it is not a way for you systematically to send a lot of emails at one time. It's a way for you to pay attention to your prospects and pay attention, put them in different segments, put them in different groups, look at the different ways that they're behaving, look at the different data that you have on them and follow up with them according to that data so you can have more touch points, more relevant touch points for them throughout the entirety of the buying cycle. And something that automation can do that I think is really, really helpful for a sales team is helping them decide when to launch their LinkedIn touch points. LinkedIn, we found that LinkedIn is, everyone's on LinkedIn now. Everyone's interacting on LinkedIn. People aren't really reading emails as much as they used to. So you can look at automation activity and be like, for example, lead scoring. A lot of marketing automation platforms have lead scoring. So someone has interacted with the emails that you're sending them X number of times and has done X number of actions. This is a good signal to your sales team to send a LinkedIn connection request, to engage with one of their posts, to send them a direct message. Automation can help look at how people are interacting with the content that you're sending to them and then follow up according to that content. I have a client right now that's running LinkedIn automation programs in addition to email, and they're seeing a 10% LinkedIn response rate on everyone that they're reaching out to because their LinkedIn follow-ups are tailored specifically to the content that they're sending before that. And LinkedIn's a really good place for your salespeople to get in front of prospects because it puts a face to the name. It helps provide, LinkedIn profiles have a ton of content behind them. They can do more research on you, more research on your company, more research on the content that you're providing. So it allows you to be more personalized and build familiarity before your salesperson has a meeting. And then thinking about, one-to-one salesperson activities, automation can help guide these as well because it helps your team understand, okay, when's a good time for me to follow up? When's a good time for me to call? When's a good time for me to drop in and visit this prospect? So you can take a look at automation, take a look at that scoring, see, okay, someone has engaged with 5 emails that we've sent in a row. We've seen them on the website. They accepted my LinkedIn connection request. This might be a good time to call them and have more of a warmer intro than just relying on cold calls. I always say to clients, automation helps take your prospect list of 1,000. You have 1,000 people that you want to reach that meet your ICP. You segment those 1,000 people into groups. You send them through separate automations. Your salespeople are following up with them based on the engagements that they have. That allows you to take your 1,000-person list and shrink it down to maybe 100 people that are going to be more receptive to calls, are going to be more receptive to having conversations with your sales team. So it helps you be more efficient in the process and also allows you to scale your outreach. So you're not, your sales team is not relying on doing those 72 touch points all entirely themselves, sending one-to-one emails, doing all the tasks themselves. It allows you to have more insight behind what the activities that they're doing and the content that they're sending. And then thinking about how everything works together, this is a very complicated graph, but just wanted to convey that not everyone should be following the same path when you're building automations. Maybe everyone starts at the same point. You have your ICP or you have your prospect list, but you need to look at the data that you have on them. You need to look at how they fit your ideal prospect. Do they have any engagements with you previously? Do they have any familiarity with you? And then send them down different paths based on that data. And then they're always moving through different paths. If someone's at a point where they've engaged at a high level, maybe they should move from a nurture path to a more high intent path that has more salesperson touches. Or if they're in a high intent path, but they haven't engaged with you in 60 days, maybe they need to move over to a nurture path so you can follow up with them with more relevant content. So when you're thinking about automating the sales process, don't think everybody follows one clear process, one clear set of steps. People need to be constantly moving through different steps, and that's the benefit of automation is that it allows you to do that more systematically and not have a manual process for this. So think about, how people are engaging, where they are, who they are, what job titles they have, what their needs are, and then put them in different automations based on that. And then thinking about other ways to kind of serve as air cover as you're building out your sales process. You have your automations going, your salespeople are doing their touch points, your website's optimized. What else can you do that helps support your sales process that maybe isn't so direct and one-to-one? Remarketing is a really good way to using advertising to remarket to people who have been on your website is a really good way to keep your brand in front of people long term. And it's a really non-invasive way to keep your brand in front of them. It allows you to put specific pieces of content, put specific visuals, puts your brand name in front of people as they're going different places on the website, as they're browsing LinkedIn, as they're looking at other things on the internet. So you're not in front of them in the sense that you're like in their inbox or you're calling them, but you're still in front of them to where they're subconsciously thinking about and seeing your brand name and what you can offer. So this is a really good way. I think David has said before, 80% of people leave your website before taking any action. So this allows you to really capitalize on those 80% of people that have some sort of interest, have some sort of familiarity with your brand, and stay in front of them as they're going through the buying process. And then another way to do this is through display advertising. Display advertising is pretty similar to remarketing, but it takes your audience list and puts these ads in front of them where they're browsing on the internet. So I always like to use the example of, with shoes. If you go to a website and you're looking at a pair of shoes and you click on a bunch of things related to these shoes, and then you leave the website without buying the shoes, you might see that shoe appear somewhere as you're going through the internet. And this is display advertising. So it's a very low cost way to keep your brand in front of people who may be interested. People who have the remarketing is the people who have been to your website. The display advertising might not be people who have been to your website. And you can do this through ads on the internet. You can do this through ads before videos. You can do it through a lot of different mediums. And it keeps your brand name in front of people as they're kind of going through the internet in a way that's not directly in front of them. And then thinking about, okay, so you have all these ideas, you're thinking about, okay, here's a million things that I can do to improve my sales process, but I don't know where to start. I don't know the easiest way for me to get a sale next month. The good thing is that there are some campaigns that you can launch that have a high ROI quicker than, things that have longer sales cycles. So thinking about low-hanging fruit with client campaigns, are there people that you have worked with previously that you can put through a campaign again? Maybe it's people that you haven't had a job order from in 6 months. Maybe it's people that you worked with in the past, but there's a new HR manager there. Looking at your current database is the highest potential for wins at the beginning is people who are currently in your database. So think about, do you have current accounts that you can upsell or cross-sell into? Do you have might be working with one department, like David had mentioned earlier, working with labor on the floor, but is there a way to expand into maybe the back office or expand into accounting and finance? Are there clients that you have worked with previously that you have a really good relationship with, but they just haven't placed job orders in a while? Those are good people to reach out to. And then thinking about your current clients and those that are most successful, can you pull relevant prospects and new clients from them through referrals? Can you reach out to your, top 10 clients and see if they can generate referrals for you? The quickest way to create wins in sales is thinking about, okay, who are people that already know me and already trust me and already understand what I can offer, and how can I sell to those people? So a couple of strategies in this is thinking about like the 3 up and 3 across. And that's who's in the room with the people that you have the best relationships with, or the people that you're trying to sell to. Is there someone who works above them that you can reach out to? Is there someone that works below them that could be a decision influencer for them? Is there someone in a different department that they work with, that they talk to constantly, that they're in the same room with, that they're in the same office with, that you can reach out to instead? Because Brad had mentioned earlier that the staffing buying process involves so many people now, it's essential that you reach out to as many people as you can with the correct message to make sure that you're really hitting your points home. And then thinking about, expanding deeper within your network or with current clients, how can you work with different departments? How can you work with different job titles? And thinking about kind of who else you can reach out to. And then events, I know for us, events are always very successful. Networking is always very successful. I know for a lot of people that nothing can replace that in-person and face-to-face interaction. So think about in your sales process how you can implement some of the digital pieces that we had talked about in the event sales process. So thinking about, if you have an event that's coming up in a couple of months, is there any pre-event outreach that you could do through email, LinkedIn, direct mail, making calls, send out a calendar link and say, hey, we'll be at XYZ event, schedule a workforce consultation with us, or meet us at the booth at this time, secure your spot. Reach out to them via LinkedIn so they know that you're attending an event, that they know what you look like, they know who you are, they feel kind of that familiarity with you. And then sending direct mail always works really, really well because it gets your brand name in front of them in a way that not a lot of people are doing now. Not a lot of people are sending mail. It's not as cluttered as email inboxes. So you can stand out through separate mail pieces. And then the standard sales, making phone calls, telling people that you'll be at events, seeing if they want to meet you at specific times. And then when you're talking to people, don't just say, hey, I'm emailing this person. Hey, we're going to be at this event. Would be great to meet you at this event. Think about what would benefit them for meeting with you at events. Is it, a giveaway? Maybe they can come to the booth because you're doing a giveaway. Is there a specific piece of content that you have that they might find useful that has data points that would be really helpful for them? Don't just say, hey, let's meet to meet. Provide a good reason for them to get in touch with you at a conference. And then schedule meetings ahead of time. Brad Biley said earlier in a consulting class today that most of his meetings that he has at events are scheduled before the event. So think about getting your calendar as full as possible before you get to that booth. So you're not at the booth, trying to find people to meet with. You already have your list of people that you're talking to. And then make sure that you're not just standing at the booth and waiting for people to come to you. A lot of the best connections that I believe the Haley marketing team has made at conferences, the connections that I've made at conferences, are not done at the booth, but it's done at lunch, at the bar, talking to people in, breakout sessions. So thinking about, don't just stand at a booth and wait for people to come to you. And it's kind of like the concept with sales now. Don't just wait for people to come to your website and fill out a form. Go out there and find them and give them the proper information so that you're building trust with them and not just waiting for them to come to you. And then when events are over, think about what value can you provide after an event. So getting an attendee list and running a post-event campaign. What are the points that you would talk to people about at the event? Highlight those in a post-event email. You can, if you didn't meet with people, say, hey, I missed you at this event, would still love to schedule a workforce consultation with you. Think about leveraging the connections that you have made and the contacts that you have after an event, and don't just rely on making all those connections at the event. And then if you kind of incorporate events with your digital process, it can help impact your sales process more holistically than just being, thinking about the 72 touch points. Seeing you at a booth could just be one of those 72 touch points. But if you're sending emails, if you're calling people, if you're doing follow-ups afterwards, that can take that one touch point that could have been this event and turn it into 10 touch points because you're following up with people throughout the whole process. So when you are strategic about the events that you're attending, it's not just being a sales activity, it's really helping improve your sales process as a whole.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. All right, let us just kind of wrap things up. So we've talked about this in January, in February, and now in March. You're not really looking just to drive sales and have sales activities and make more calls in 2026. You're looking to build a growth engine, something that allows you to build a sales funnel and allows you to attract and convert more employers into being clients and more job seekers into being placed talent. So winning companies are integrate a whole bunch of things. I'll show you the diagram again that we looked at last month and the month before in case you never saw it or may forget what it looked like. But essentially there's 7 parts. You have to have a really good message, something that clearly positions you, makes you stand out, shows the value you can provide to each type of staffing buyer and conveys your core story. That your website is optimized, not just for SEO, but optimized for response, that CRO with strong calls to action and clear conversion paths. That you're doing the sales enablement, which is what we spent a lot of time on last month and this month, giving your team the process and the tools to succeed. Today we drove much deeper into the buyer enablement, answering those big five questions in the selling seven videos so that people get through 80% of the sales process and they see you as the top contender to win their business before even the first sales call. That you're doing things for employer attraction. This is your digital marketing. You have a plan for SEO, AIO, social media, paid advertising, retargeting, so that you're getting people to find you and you're staying top of mind. Then you're nurturing everybody you know, every client, every candidate, every prospect at least once a month with some sort of consistent high value educational content. And as Rachel showed you in the diagram, depending on where they are in the relationship, it may be more sales focused nurturing if they're actively engaged in the buying process, or it may be more gentle educational nurturing if they're not ready to talk to you about their staffing needs. And then you're using automation as the accelerant to make that sales enablement, buyer enablement, employer attraction, and nurturing work more efficiently. Put it in one diagram. This is what it looks like, but it's about being strategic in your targeting, having a systematic process for outreach, using multiple channels to engage people, optimizing the conversion paths, and then thinking over those 72 touches, the long-term perspective to get prospects to find you, understand your value, trust you, see you as someone they want to work with, and give you that opportunity to win their business. Like the final takeaway from today is, staffing firms don't lose deals because of relationships. They lose deals because buyers don't understand the value you can offer. They don't see you as different. And buyers delay hire or purchasing decisions simply because of those first two bullets. The right tools, the things we talked about today, they remove friction in the buying process. They make it easier to work with you and they accelerate hiring decisions. Look at that, guys. We actually finished one on time. That never happens with us. For everybody that's here today, thank you for joining us. If there are questions you have, I'll have our phone number and contact info in just a second. But another thing I would like to offer everybody is you got to see Rachel talk about some of the cool stuff that she's doing in automation. And as a guest of ours today, we have a little thank you for you, which is if you're interested in our sales funnel automation services, that's where you work with Rachel and her team to put in place a lot of what we talked about today, the right content, the right outreach, the right strategies for different types of buyers, former customers, candidates that you've placed years ago, cold leads, warm leads. We put that together into the sales funnel automation. And what we're offering everyone today is free startup. So essentially, we'll get you going, no charge to you. That'll save you more than $1,800. And if you need help, want to put that into place, or you have any other questions, just reach out. You can contact us at 888-696-2900. Although almost nobody calls now, so you can use the other link, info@haleymarketing.com, to reach out to us and get the conversation started. And from all of us at Haley Marketing, thank you for joining today. Actually, I should have mentioned next week, Brad and I and Susan Wurst are off to the Staffing Industry Executive Forum. And so the week after that, if you're going to be in Austin with us, please say hello. We'll have a booth. If you're not going to be there, then join us. And we're going to be showing you the things we learn about the staffing industry at the Executive Forum, and including, we'll tell you a little bit more about the Rogue IQ product that we just officially launched. Great new way to manage a lot of the digital marketing. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for today's Lunch with Haley webinar, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.